Good morning, everyone. It's Dan Bossy and Ben Buckner. We are here talk about the grain markets. We've got corn up about 3 to 4 cents. The wheat market is lower. The soybean market's been higher. We've had now a 3-day rally in the corn market. A lot of short covering. First of all, we had spread unwinding. Everybody was short of corn, so we saw long soybean short corn spreads, long wheat short corn spreads unwound. That gave us the bounce. And then overnight, there was a little chatter about pollination problems in places like McLean County, Illinois, Grundy County. These are areas that have been a little dry, and something about the corn world, of course, the tightness of the corn ear and not allowing pollens to silk and giving us some problems longer term. We do not see this as widespread. This is corn that was planted back around the 14th to 16th of April. It had a growth spurt, and again, when we talk to our client base, we are not seeing that same kind of pollination problem. In fact, my only concern is about maybe some excess moisture and a little denitrification of soils across far western Iowa. Ben, what do you see this morning? And give us a quick run.
Yeah, sure thing. So we've got a little bit of pushback in the corn market and in soybeans today, at least. Soybean market's been very back and forth, but yeah, the corn market's trying to stabilize, which I think makes some measure of fundamental sense, maybe even chart-based sense. We've got probably funds combined net short this morning in Chicago wheat and corn at about 260,000 contracts. We think that's virtually unchanged from last Tuesday, the last known number from the CFTC. And you can see here on your right that is the second shortest net short on record, at least for this particular week, the first being last year. So I think that the maybe easy money has been made, at least for the middle part of summer. And so, yeah, these ultra nuanced debates over yield are dominating, at least this week. But again, is there a long-term threat to yield, I think is the question. I think given the bounce, it is kind of all about pick your targets. And we do think you need to do something if we were to see a further recovery. And again, part of this is based on U.S. weather. It looks very wet east of the Mississippi, which I think is important. Those soils have been very, very dry. I think a lot of those fields can withstand rainfall of 2 to 4 inches in 5 to 7 days. More rain for Iowa as well, and at least the people that I have talked to suggest even that's fine. It has been wet in Iowa, but again, thinking about long-term weather since about winter, it was just so incredibly dry winter, spring, the western corn belt. I think that rainfall could be absorbed. Here's where NOAA tells us soil moisture anomalies will be on July 29th. And you do see some lingering deficits in Illinois and Indiana, but this is pretty significantly improved from where those deficits stand today. So it does look like things getting wetter, not drier. Don't even see real sustained heat in the Midwest. So that's something that the market can see pretty easily. But to me, it's kind of everywhere else, kind of on the fringe. So we've talked a lot about the combined, corn, hard red wheat, and sorghum balance sheets being pretty loose in 2025. Now we kind of look at our neighbors in North America and what weather has done there and what is crop potential there. And so it's been soaking wet in Mexico. We started out the 2025 growing season pretty dry in a lot of areas there, but that has been virtually erased because of the monsoonal pattern has performed pretty well. On the left, you got July 1st, 29% of normal rainfall in Mexico. It will have rained 3.5 to 7.5 inches. Anywhere from 80% to 200% of normal. And on the right, you've got the associated vegetation health compared to last year. It's going to be hard to move the needle really on Mexican corn supply and demand. They only harvest 16 million acres, but I do think you could see yields close to record high, about 4 tons a hectare. Does that trim their import needs for corn by 1 or 2 million tons? Anything on the margin, the U.S. could lose 60 or 80 million bushels of potential demand in 2025. So I do think Mexico corn production is going to be a lot better than it was the last 2 years. Canada as well, just very timely rain has been the feature there. So you probably do have long-term dryness in place, but it just rains every week to 10 days. And our context suggests that the timely nature of those rains is keeping trend yield potential intact there. This, like the Mexican graphic, July 1st to 29% of normal rainfall, about 1 inch to 3.5 inches. That is anywhere from 60 to 200% of normal. So we're just kind of struggling to see crop problems almost anywhere. Where, sure, I think that there is fair to debate sort of the details of regional corn yield pollination issues. But overall, I think that the crop health telling us record yields still very much intact in the U.S. No problems elsewhere in North America. Even France probably going to get a wetter pattern second half of July. So you're kind of running out of places to point to suggest there are big grain issues anywhere in the northern hemisphere at least. So we kind of started to think about again. I think the stability in corn makes sense. We're not going to have a lot of old crop corn. Does that matter beyond the next 2 weeks? I think is the bigger question. But corn stocks maybe 1.32 billion bushels this year, but getting that 16.2 billion bushel crop is the focal point, I think, with respect to risk management. So here is storage capacity, grain storage capacity since 1990 in the U.S. This includes everything from corn, wheat, barley, edible beans, flaxseed, no cotton, no. And so you can see that it's growing by about 0.1%, but more or less it has plateaued since about 2018. And I don't think we're going to run out of storage capacity, but could you get to 90% of storage capacity? We haven't seen anything like that since 2016. Generally speaking, what do cash markets do? What does interior basis do? If you're kind of running against that, 90 to 91% of total storage capacity, assuming a corn yield of 184, maybe a soybean yield of 53, and no problems with sorghum or those minor crops. So I think that's kind of what's next. Corn market stability makes sense today, but does that change October 1st, November 1st, as we are starting to sort of needing to clear inventories? And so that's really been the story from us all along. We just don't see, I think, Dan, any fundamental change to that. We will be choppy periodically, but big picture risks, I think, do lean negative in the market.
No, I think you're right, Ben, and thank you for that rundown. We keep our eyes and ears open, whether there's pollination issues or whether there's something going on. We'll try to run it down for you. But as of today, we're not finding anything of importance. Every year, there's always a field here or there, a county here or there, a district here or there that has a problem, but it doesn't seem to add up. And so I agree, Ben. We're looking at a 184 corn plus 53 on beans. Let's see how Mother Nature treats us. A little warmer in the plains and maybe the Southwest, Midwest, but we're only looking at temperatures being 3 to 6 degrees above normal. Not a real concern here today. But thank you for the rundown. Any closing comments, Ben?
I don't think so. No, think about as we get maybe a little more volatility in the markets, risk management, cash markets, that is our entire focus. So be prepared, I think, to make some moves in the market if you were to see some follow through on this recovery.
Yeah, and there's always that QR code. You get a week, you get a month for $1 at Ag Resource if you want to follow our recommendations and our specific daily research. Be well, everyone. Good trading on Wednesday. We'll be back tomorrow.